Hello, Doctor. So I just invite you to take a couple of minutes to really, really land here and arrive here. Sometimes we are physically there, but mentally somewhere else. So just maybe close your eyes and taking a couple of minutes to take few deep breaths and to be really here and now, physically and mentally present. Taking few deep breaths from belly and allowing your body, maybe if it likes to move or shake a little bit. Maybe you had a busy morning, a quick breakfast, or maybe a lazy Sunday. Whatever, it's welcome. And thanking yourself to give yourself this time, this hour of upgrading your knowledge, of upgrading your wisdom and sharing yourself in this community. Taking few more deep breaths and maybe giving a scan to your body from head to toe. And when you're taking deep breath, maybe letting your jaw be loose. Your jaw is not tightened up. Take a notice. Your jaw is loose and maybe slightly open. You can allow breathing from your mouth. This is a sexual education summit, so it's important we are present in our body. And whenever you are ready, you can open your eyes. And share if you like to say something, few words. How are you feeling today? Relaxed. Wonderful. Excited for day 3 of the summit, feeling full and satisfied. Good to know. Thanks for sharing, Niana. Enthusiastic. Feeling peaceful, magical. Thank you. Curious, steady. Okay, let's start and let's welcome Dr. Rajan Bhonsle. Thank you so much, Dr. Rajan, for taking out this time. And he is one of the topmost sexologist doctor in India. And let me read his accreditations in this field of sexual medicine and doctorate. He is the honorary professor and HOD of sexual medicine at KEM Hospital and St. GS Medical College, Mumbai, which is the largest college in Southeast Asia. He's the founder and director of Heart to Heart Counseling Center and Dean of the Institute of Human Technology. He is a senior consultant in sexual medicine and counselor practitioner for over 30 years and has written and authored of 8 books on sexual medicine and human sexuality. He conducts and holds intensive multilingual training programs all over India and world. Thank you so much, Dr. Rajan, for giving us this time. We heartfully welcome you.
Thank you for that.
And Dr. Meenu, wife of Dr. Rajan Bhonsle, thank you so much also for giving us this time. She is a doctorate in the field of psychotherapy and has been practicing and working over 3 decades. She is a relationship counselor and a qualified trainer in the Robert Kharkov model of counseling, which is an offshoot of Carl Rogers client-centered therapy, as well as rational emotive behavior therapy, and conducts intensive practical training programs in counseling and applied transactional analysis for those in the helping profession. Welcome, Dr. Meenu, and welcome, Dr. Rajan. Would you like to say a few words before we start with the questions?
Just a pleasure to be here and interacting with everyone across the globe. Some interesting participants. Many of them are students. Love you all.
Thank you, Dr. Meenu. So let's start with our first question, which is also the main focus for this summit, is what kind of sex education you believe that parents in school should be sharing with their children, and what are the important elements of sex ed from your point of view to cover?
Yeah, actually, sex education is a domain of parents. I feel it should be done by parents predominantly. If they really do a good job, probably institutes will not have much to do. Why? Because children mostly spend time with their parents. They are very close to parents. Parents have raised them from the day one till now. They're very comfortable with the parents. They can get a lot of privacy with the parents. As against that, if you look at schools, the teacher is teaching a group of students. They may not have adequate privacy. They may not even feel courageous enough to ask questions. So it is between parents and school. I feel parents should be at a forefront in giving sex education. And the comfort level also between the parent and child is always very high, and it should be high, as against a teacher who is teaching a group of students. Moreover, teachers' comfort level with the subject, teachers' knowledge of the subject, and teacher knowing each child's temperament could differ. But parents invariably know their child pretty well. So that is why predominantly it should be done by parents. Another reason is why, because school begins much later. When the child reaches 5, 6, 7, then he starts going to school. And much sex education is required much before they even start going to school. I always say that the sex education begins the moment child is born. Here the child is born and there the sex education begins. Like I always say, giving sex education is synonymous with loving your child. That we never say that, when should I start loving my child after he is born? Here the child is born and there you start loving. Something similar. Sex education begins the moment life begins and it continues, and the school comes much later on. But let us say that there are many parents who are not comfortable, probably they have not known, they didn't have this awareness. So then schools have to do the job for them. Because by the time they realize this child is already in a school, child is already grown up. So naturally, institute should take it upon them, because every parent may not have the skill, may not have the knowledge. So when it comes to school, there has to be a lot that can be done at the school level, because children from the standard 1 to standard 10 or standard 10 in India, they go through multiple phases in their growth also. And at each stage, age-appropriate sex education needs to be given formally. Well, if you ask me what exactly needs to be covered in sex education, can I share a screen with you? Should I do
Sure,
that?
sure, yes.
Yeah. What do children need to be educated about human sexuality? First of all, to appreciate and accept one's own body in totality. What happens because of a bias in parents' mind about their private parts? Invariably, that bias gets transmitted to children. All our body parts are equally beautiful and they have their own function. There is no body part which is dirty, which is ugly, which is to be ashamed of. But that kind of message has to go through by parents, the way they talk to children, or they touch the child, they dress the child. So first of all, it is to be given to appreciate one's body in its totality without causing any division. Because If there is division in the child's mind, these are the parts to be accepted, these are the parts to be rejected, these are the parts which are good parts, and these are dirty parts, we are making a big mistake there. Secondly, to prepare children for a physical, psychological, and all the changes that take place that reach typically at an adolescent age. Because a lot of changes take place and they need to be prepared for that. As far as physical changes are concerned, often children do get ready because they see adults, they see the difference between child's body and adult's body. But when it comes to psychological changes, emotional changes, sexual changes, invariably they are not ready. They are not told about it. So when these changes start taking place in children, they are invariably shocked. They don't know whether what's happening with them is normal or abnormal, and they should accept it or reject it. They should enjoy it or they should be condemning towards it. They don't know. And if there is no comfort level between them and their parents about it, they may not even ask questions. And that's where repression begins with children. So to prepare children before any of those changes take place, to tell them beforehand, is an important part of the sex education. Also, as the point number 3 is to be able to interact with both the genders comfortably, because often the awkwardness, often when a man and woman relate or a boy or girl interact with each other, we see a lot of discomfort. People are not very comfortable. They can't even make eye contact. At such time, to have a comfort level and to be respectful towards the opposite sex is so important, and that's very a major part of the sex education. So, as I written the point number 4, to help children to grow, become adults who will use their sexuality in mature, responsible ways. Point number 5 is to educate in a way that leads to building healthy attitude towards sex, high standards of conduct, responsible behavior, and wholesome personality. Of course, there are more points, and I have covered there to be able to enjoy sexual feelings without guilt, shame, or fear, because that's one big thing I deal with couples when they are unable to even relax, they are unable to even let go, they are unable to even respond to each other just because there's a lot of guilt and shame associated with sexual relationship. And then to avoid sexual abuse, to avoid any unwanted pregnancy, to avoid any sexually transmitted diseases. And one big thing in India in particular, to learn to refrain from consulting exploitative quacks in the matter of sexual medicine. Quackery is so rampant in India. People are exploited because they don't know much about sexuality. So not only unqualified people, but there are even qualified quacks, I call them. So even though they have a qualification, they invariably tend to exploit patients not having adequate knowledge. But if people are educated, children are educated, then they will not be able to be exploited by these quacks. These are some of the reasons why we need to educate children about human sexuality. So again, to kind of sum up, what is sex education? I always say it is transferring correct values, balanced attitudes, and sound perceptions about sex and sexuality, and that makes 98% of sex education. But many people feel that sex education means teaching children about sexual intercourse. That is why the upper sentence, the sex education does not mean merely providing information on sexual intercourse or genital-centered sex. Many people who oppose sex education think that sex education is only about teaching young children about sexual intercourse, and that's where the opposition comes. So to put it together again, when you use the word sex education, many people interpret it differently. There are also people who have shown porn in the name of sex education. So I always like to add, sex education is value-based, culture-specific, age-appropriate, and scientific sex education. Then it is a complete definition of sex education.
Wonderfully explained. And I really love it how you quoted and started that we parents don't ask that from when should I start loving my child? It is that natural. So it is
Can't hear you.
and this is when
Yeah,
hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
And this is when it starts setting and forming the sexual education for the children from that very age. So Dr. Meenu, would you please like to add to this question as well?
so he spoke about teaching and preaching, but I would like to touch upon sex education as being modeled by the parents. So it's more about parental modeling and not about parental teaching, because children don't learn what they hear but what they see. So most of their learning is observational learning. And as he mentioned, that sex education begins at home, the observational learning of a man woman relationship also begins at home, with the child observing how the parents relate with each other. So if the male child observes the father verbally and non verbally communicating disregard and disrespect towards the mother, using sexually explicit and crass language while referring to a woman, words referring to a woman, vulgarity in humor while describing the female anatomy, and proud descriptions by the father about his personal sexual exploits. So, such a child will then learn to view a woman as an object of sexual gratification, an object of exploitation, and subservience. So, just as we witness inappropriate adult conduct and it can adversely impact their sexual attitudes and behaviors. So, if a child is observing the parents expressing warm and caring feelings with mutual regard and respect, love and humility in both, he learns to emulate emotional intimacy, which is a prerequisite for sexual intimacy between the genders. Also, I believe the discourse has to change from opposite sexes to complementary sexes. So, when you change it and you use the term as man and woman, they complement each other. They are not opposite sexes, they are complementary sexes. This terminology can also eliminate hostile, oppositional, and hierarchical tendencies. And this, of course, so if there's a hierarchy, there is this need, and we talk so much about rape across the globe, also in India. So the need to attack, oppose, and subdue the other comes only when you have created an oppositional environment. So sensitivity between the genders and mutual respect needs to be fostered as a part of the sex education, so that they grow up as gender sensitized individuals and do not exploit the other, male or female, and therefore not leading to physical and psychological harm, which is becoming a social problem today. So I just wanted to add this.
Wonderful. Yes, it is. The parents are the first idol for the children. So, how they live and practice sexuality on their own is what children imbibe in the first place. So, thank you so much for bringing this important, part to it. My next question to you, for Dr. Rajan, is that I know that you have been working very closely to bring sex education in schools. So, what are the in India specifically? So, what are the
Mhm.
hindrances or difficulties you have been facing?
Yeah. See, as I said in my earlier narration, that the moment you use the word sex education, what people understand, even the people who are in power, those who are in government, they have not had themselves any sex education. So they tend to have a very lopsided or very weird idea about sex education. They start imagining that probably children are little children in the third and fourth and fifth standard are going to be taught about various sexual positions, and they are going to be taught about sexual intercourse and all that. And they wonder why our such young children require this. But they don't know what exactly sex education entails. What exactly does it include? Opposition comes very naturally. Why do we require that? Or let children rather learn maths and geography and history and science. Why do they require sex education? Probably they will require it when they are going to get married. Why they require when they're at such a young age? And it just doesn't occur to them. And they being in a power position, also no one can simply go and tell them, start explaining it to them, because they're themselves living in on an ivory tower where you can't even approach them. And I have had this situation encountered so often that I tell you, I would like to narrate something very interesting that I did a few years back. Um, uh, you know, uh, Maharashtra government, the state where we live, when Chief Minister Vilasrao Deshmukh was a chief minister at that time, and somehow we had a family relationship. So in a friendly conversation, I explained it to him why sex education should be brought at school level, and somehow he was convinced because I got a lot of chance talking to him in an informal manner, and then he put it up in an assembly of Maharashtra and that let's study this issue whether is sex education really necessary, and a committee was formed by government taking people from all the parties. Opposition parties were taken and they created a committee by name Estimates Committee, which was headed by one MLA from Ahmednagar by name Vilas Tanpure. And they did a lot of study all over Maharashtra. They met teachers, they met school trustees, they met parents, they met doctors and asked them, do you find sex education really necessary? And unanimously, somehow everyone spoke in favor of this. And this happened more than a decade and a half ago. And then the resolution was passed in Maharashtra government assembly that the sex education should be made compulsory in the school. But when the orders went to schools, schools said, even we agree with you, but who is going to teach? Our teachers are not trained in teaching this subject. They don't know much about it. Either provide teachers to all these thousands of schools in Maharashtra or provide training to our teachers. And somehow government was not ready with that answer. So it just got halted. Somehow at that very time, one of my book on sex education, one of the first books on sex education was to be released. So I very deliberately called the Health Minister of Maharashtra, Mr. Khanvilkar, Education Minister of Maharashtra, which is Dilip Valse Patil, and in a big function where press cameras are there, media was there, huge crowd was there. I asked this question directly on the face of it to the Education Minister and Minister in front of everyone. If the government resolution is passed and the orders have gone to schools, why is it not being implemented for so long? They exactly said the same thing. We don't know how to train our teachers and we don't have trained teachers. So we don't know how to go about it, even though principally we agree. And then he told me, Dr. Bhonsle, I've been working in this field for so long. How about you creating a module and presenting it to us? I said, I'll do that. For 3 months, I worked on this module. I created a proper module for schools. But by the time I could present it to these ministers, the chief minister had to resign. A new chief minister came, Sushil Kumar Shinde came. This health minister was never taken into ministry ever again. The education minister, Dilip Valse Patil's portfolio was changed. He became an energy minister. It all fizzled out. I'm just giving one elaborate example, but this has happened multiple times. Me working in this field, you can imagine what kind of frustration I must have felt. That each time you have to begin from, from the very beginning to start convincing these people who are ministers and who have portfolios, to convince them why it is necessary. So as far as myself and Dr. Meenu are concerned, I said to reach out to people, what best we can do, we can write about it. We have written books, we have written articles, we have been visiting schools, we are training teachers to teach this subject at a school level. And a very good work is now going on.
And do you think that it would be would be soon implemented in school, like if the work is going on?
On the contrary, the situation is exactly opposite. Very, very recently in this lockdown, a new education policy was announced by this current government. And they have what was existing earlier about introducing sex education was removed. Happened as recently as in last 1.5 months. Why? How do we know? Again, biases towards sex education, and they feel it is not that necessary, and their ideas of sex education stop them from having it implemented.
This is so pity to know, yeah, that you were so close of implementing it and then suddenly everything changes upside down. So what do you think that are the alternate resources of sex education for children?
Yeah, of course, we're already there. When I started off, there was no social media. There was nothing like Facebook, or there was no social media existed. But now we are not actually anymore dependent on even media. We don't depend even on governments. We can very well bring it out to people. That is why, coming out with good books, writing good articles, having programs such as this, having wonderful YouTube clips to educate people is a way by which you can reach out to people. And we have ourselves doing it a lot, and there are some other people who must also be doing it. So it is there. Only thing, what happened when it comes to internet material, there is a lot of wrong materials also available, incorrect, inappropriate materials also available. Who's going to filter that out? That is why parental guidance is very, very necessary. They can very well use the tools of good books, good sites, but ultimately someone has to monitor the whole process. Otherwise, it would never be age appropriate. A 5-year-old child may access something which is good for 15-year-old, or a 15-year-old boy may access something which is not appropriate for his age. That is why parental supervision, parental guidance, and material being available on internet now, we need not depend on schools anymore. Anyway, now children are attending schools from home. So on the contrary, this is a good time that if the parent as a community take it upon themselves, we will be able to educate our children beautifully, irrespective of what government thinks about it.
Wonderful, wonderful initiative from you. And yeah, it's not just in India that it is banned. I heard recently, even in Poland and in many other European countries, also sex education is banned. And it is such a means government don't ban pornography or other, you know, sexual related content, but yes, sex education is banned. So this is the hypocrisy we see on many levels. Also, I would like to quote here the cultural conditioning which comes up in India specifically. Many parents, or also maybe in other countries like Arabic countries, or to say that they feel that this is more a Western concept to teach children about sex education. What would you and Dr. Meenu would like to say on this?
See, it is such a big myth. On the contrary, India is the only country, and Indian culture is the only culture which studied sexuality like a science and presented it like an art thousands of years ago. The oldest scripture on sex in the world, and not it is, I'm not just talking about Kama Sutra, that's what most of the people think. Oldest scripture, religious scripture in the world is Vigyan Bhairav Tantra from India, which is a dialogue between Shiva and Parvati, and where such wonderful exploration of sexuality, evolution of sexuality in human beings is given. So oldest scriptures in India are about sexuality. In India, we have Khajuraho temples. They were built more than 1,000 years ago, and they were not built just by a few people. You know, to building one temple is so difficult that we are struggling with at Ayodhya. Here, even today, there are 44 temples at Khajuraho. On the outskirts of this temple, there are erotic sculptures. And it's not just that someone wanted, some artist wanted to make these sculptures, they made it. A lot of money must have required. So the affluent class in those days was in favor of it. They provided the money. The rulers of those days were in favor of it. They gave the permission. And these are religious places. So religious people were in favor of it. And these temples are in the middle of the town. They are not somewhere in some faraway places. So even common man was in favor of it. This was the scene in India more than 1,000 years ago. So we believed in educating, knowing about sexuality, studying sexuality, presenting it beautifully thousands of years ago. Even, in India, we worship what is called a Shivlinga. Now, Shivlinga is not Shiva's face. It is a union between Shiva and Parvati's lingas, which we worship. And you will find every smallest of the village in India may not have Krishna's temple, may not have Hanuman's temple, but will always have a Shivlinga temple. And Shivlinga is actually reminding us this is something to be worshipped. This is so sacred. This is so beautiful, worth worship. That's what Indian culture is. So how can we call this a Western influence, or is a Western idea? No. India believed it thousands of years ago before any other culture could even think of it or believe it. And it is documented there. Several scriptures are there. Thousands of years old scriptures are there where sexuality is described so beautifully and so complete.
Yes, wonderfully. You have explained and pointed out on our rich traditional, scriptures, and whether it is Kama Sutra, Khajuraho temples, or Vigyan Bhairav Tantra, it is so rich. And it is scientifically researched in India very well. Yeah, you pointed it out. Dr. Meenu, would you please like to add here?
Yeah, just one quick point that I could add is that it is in India and the language Sanskrit that the most beautiful word for sex is described. It's called samabhog. Samabhog means equal pleasure. Sama means equal and bhog means pleasure. And this is a Sanskrit word. This is the one that can change the discourse from intercourse to intimacy. So the sharing of intimacy instead of just the genital intercourse was first introduced by India in this particular word, which talks about mutually sensitive, non coercive, non exploitive relating for mutual and equal pleasure. And this concept of sharing, loving intimacy instead of the lustful intercourse was first in India.
Wow. Yes, you know how beautifully you explained this word sambhog. And yes, yes. And even Osho has said sambhog se samadhi ki or, from sex to samadhi. Yes. Thank you so much. It's a
In, in,
delight to
in,
have these conversations with you. I'm truly enjoying it, let me tell you. And I
see,
hope our audience also.
in English language, whether a lady is raped or they are having consensual sex, the word is same, intercourse. It's such a dry, meaningless word if you really go. Such a technical word. But the moment they use the word sambhog, it actually says that, both have to be involved and both have to be enjoying. And that's why this word is so beautiful.
Yeah. Wow, it's so beautifully explained also, like the equality and the dance between masculine and feminine. And it's not just one-sided, but it's the union of this
Absolutely.
divine, yeah, feminine and masculine. Thank you so much. I like to bring here, after this Nirbhaya's rape case in India, India was prominently highlighted internationally as the rape, Delhi as a rape capital, India prominently. There are so many rape, sexual violence against women. What would you like to say on this, Dr. Rajan?
I think Dr. Meenu is in a better position. She has done a lot of study why we Indians tend to, behave in this manner and what's wrong with us. I think I
Yes.
request Dr. Meenu to answer this.
All right, so, well, sexual crimes do not only take place on urban roads, as in the case of the Nirbhaya gang rape, they also happen in one's own home, in police stations, in politicians' bungalows, in private farmhouses, in hotel rooms, on campuses, college campuses, in remote rural areas, in sex trafficking dens, and many other places where policing can never ever take place, at your neighbor's home. So, rape is not only an act of physical violence, but one of psychological violence, and it originates from a very, very warped mindset. And it's important to understand what goes into creating a sexual offender or a perpetrator of sexual crimes. So when we look at India, maybe I can start by telling you an interview that I did with a sexual offender. He and another friend of his had raped a girl. Now, I spoke to him when he was in prison. Uh, and of course, law was going to take its own course, but I thought it was important to understand the mindset of a sexual offender. So, when I understood his story, here it is. So, he is from a very poor family, lives in a hutment. He is the only son. He was around 19 when he committed this sexual crime against that young girl, he and his friend. Every night he has seen and heard his father being violent with his own mother across a simple, cloth curtain. he can hear his mother protesting, and every night there is marital rape. The father beats the mother. She's protesting. He continues to go against her will. The next morning, he sees the mother cooking for the father, packing the lunch box for the father. The father is sitting on his cycle. The mother is giving the lunch box to the father. The father is smacking the mother lightly on her butt, and she's sheepishly grinning at the father, and only for another night of the same thing to recur. So the man woman relationship he has seen and heard every night is one of that it's okay to treat a woman this way. She protests, but it's okay to go ahead nevertheless, and she smiles the next morning. Now, the same fellow also has in his hand a very cheap Chinese smartphone, a multimedia phone, where he has instant and quick access to pornography, to porn stars, and especially in India, the typical item numbers in Bollywood movies, where they will plant a song, a very, to titillate the audience with, a very, very sexually explicit kind of song called item numbers. So a woman is also referred to as an item in India. Now, along with this, take the fact that this boy is under the influence of cheap booze, some country liquor, cheap booze. His inhibitions are lowered. He believes that it's okay to treat a woman this way. He's grown in a very sex saturated environment, so there's excessive arousal because of what he can see 24/7 on his smartphone. Couple all that with him and his friends goading him and telling him, they're all drunk and doped and telling him to go ahead and daring him to commit that act, and we have a rape on our hands. This boy did not even feel that he had committed a crime. Every way I tried to ask him the question, he felt that it's okay to treat a woman this way, especially a woman who is wearing Western clothes. There's a little bit of slight revealing of her body. She's walking on a road with her boyfriend, and the boyfriend is trying to smooch her. That means she's open to what I see on my smartphone. That means that even if she protests, it's okay to go ahead because my mom protests, my dad goes ahead, and everything is fine the next morning. So this is a case that I have quoted of an interview that I've had with one of these boys in prison. So if we look at the multiple factors that go into creating this mindset, number one, it is the fact that there is excessive arousal, as I was just mentioning to you, because of the sex saturated environment with porn, etc., everything available. Uh, the other is that generally we are currently in a phase uh, in the world, not only in India, where everyone expects instant gratification, and denying oneself the pleasure of what they want right now is unacceptable. Everything is available on the click of a mouse, not only access to porn, etc., but you can through your credit card, you can buy now and pay later. You have fast food. Everything is an instant access. It's an instant access culture. You can have virtual sex right now. So across the board, we find that people are unable to tolerate or have very low threshold for tolerating frustrations that emerge from denying to yourself something that you have put your mind to. So the second is a low frustration tolerance. The other is, as I mentioned, this boy who was inebriated, he was doped, he was drunk, and so a low impulse control. Uh, Very often we find sexual crimes are committed as an act of dare to impress your peers, the ones that we are talking about even in India. Also, there's a very poor consequential thinking, because you see, the law puts the onus on the woman to prove that the sexual act was a coercive one and not a consensual one. And so the woman has to prove uh, to the courts that it was in fact against her will. And it is so hard to prove that it was not consensual. And therefore, there are many people, especially those in powerful places, who commit such acts, believe that they can circumvent the law because the lady will never be able to prove that that is in fact the case. Also, so this is something what I'm going to say is not, very much accepted in the world, but I must say it because these are my personal views, that we have uh, now a new breed of the ultra right wing radical feminist, or the feminazi culture. Now this is really not doing any favors to the women in our country. uh, it is very different to ask for liberation so that you are comfortable with your own sexuality, and and that's empowering to be comfortable with your sexuality and sensuality. But if you are going to flaunt your sexuality, you know, and flout common sense, especially if you are, let's say, in an area where we are looking at the fact that there is no sex education or very limited sex education. Now, if you are going to dress in a way in a certain area where they have never seen anyone dressing that way, you are flouting common sense. So I think that though this is something that many feminists will not like to hear, I believe that, trying to move the discourse from subservience of a woman, you have moved it to superiority and flouting common sense. I'm sorry to say that. So this kind of is also creating a problem, because when you are being this um, right-wing feminist, and flaunting your sexuality or flaunting your body, not being comfortable with your body and sexuality, but flaunting it, it is not endearing you to a large number of men in this country. And they now want to kind of uh, teach you a lesson. And my interviews with many people in the rural areas are actually showing this trend more, because they are also having access to YouTube. So that's something I thought I must raise. Um, Beyond that, I believe, as we have been discussing and what this entire webinar is based on, is the fact that there is a lack of gender sensitization in homes and in schools, as I mentioned in your first question. If you don't see that kind of parental modeling, and if you believe that it's okay to treat the woman this way, so all this put together creates the mindset of a rapist.
Yeah, wow. So beautifully, I've outlined all the points and taken up all the points for this question. Thank you so much, Dr. Meenu, for bringing this light. Um, Dr. Rajan, I would like to ask you that how, if you think that sex education can help to prevent sex abuse, what kind of sex education can help to prevent sex abuse? Can you please? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. See, sex abuse can happen at any age. It's not that it happens only when a girl is a grown-up girl. I have seen, abuse or a sexual assault on as girls and boys as young as 1 year old, 2 year old also. So naturally, parents have to start educating children to protect themselves from any such possibility. Even when the child is at home and you are most of the time around the child, there are domestic servants, there are drivers where the child will be exposed to, and any such moment, the sexual abuse can take place. And I have seen it happening in those households also where parents have been extremely protective about their children. They are aware of it, but still there are always loopholes and gaps where this happens. We need to start teaching children about sexuality. One of the aspects of sex education for children is to kind of slowly and gradually educate them about how to protect themselves from possible sexual abuse. And in that, again, I would like to share a screen. And of course, this is a definition of a sexual abuse. Many people are confused about it, that what exactly sexual abuse is. I'm not going to read this out. Those who are here can read the exact definition of sexual abuse. But what exactly it entails is that any inappropriate touching, fondling, watching, talking, or being forced to look at another person's sex organs are all forms of sexual abuse. It also can be verbal, visual, audio, or any other form which forces a person to participate in inappropriate sexual contact or attention. And all these come under Indian Penal Code, and they are all punishable. So how exactly are we going to educate children about it? Number one is that when the child is growing and the child starts picking up the language, and when you start teaching child simple things like names of body parts. So we teach children, oh, these are eyes, this is nose, this is mouth, this is chest, this is your tummy, and then suddenly we take a jump and go to legs as if there doesn't exist anything. So child should be taught correct names for all body parts, so that first of all they get the message that all our body parts are equally good. There is nothing about any body part which you need to be ashamed of, and they should know the scientific names of all the body. You can teach children the word nose for nose or eyes for eyes. What's the problem in teaching the correct names? Invariably, people, when it comes to private parts or it comes to genitals, parents start using the word which is some kind of a slang, some kind of a nickname, and would never tell the correct name. And even when they're telling, the kind of expressions they will make, the awkwardness they will express in their body language starts giving a wrong signal to a child. So number one is that teach the correct names of body parts to children, because then they will be able to even understand when anyone report if someone is touching the child in an inappropriate manner. The first step, when child is as young as 1 or 2 or 3 year old and you're teaching the child the names of body parts, teach the correct names of body. Then by the time child becomes around 4 or 5 years age, when now he is likely to now leave the house, maybe to attend schools, or he may be taken by a driver, or he may be handled by a servant or ayah bai at home, and you are not going to there to supervise the whole situation. It is necessary to teach the children the concept of private parts. That means child already knows the names of body parts. Now you are going to teach further. There are some parts of your body which are private parts, for no one to see, no one to touch, no one to expose that part. These are your private parts, and you must know that and tell exactly children what are the private parts. That's the second thing which is very, very necessary, because even when there are children who are abused, often they are unable to report because they don't know what to say. They don't know the correct names of the private body parts. And to tell the children that if anyone touches the private parts, resist bravely and report immediately. That is very important. And also to teach the children between appropriate and inappropriate touch. Often people use the terminology good touch and bad touch. It's absolutely, I am not in favor of using this terminology. Good touch and bad touch is a wrong way of addressing the same issue. Because often the sexual touch may feel good. It may not be painful. And people tend to interpret that bad means something that hurts. Bad means something which is painful. But if the sexual touch by an abuser feels good, child will be confused. It's not a good touch or bad touch. It is an appropriate touch and inappropriate touch. That is the kind of terminology we need to use, and never use the terminology good touch and bad touch. And it needs to be told to the child. It's not only touching your private parts, but anyone who touches even anywhere else in your body in a manner which looks strange. It is not the way mommy, papa touch you, and it looks little unusual. You must either resist bravely and report immediately. So the difference between appropriate and inappropriate touch has to be told to children at a very young age. Also, those who are abusers, invariably they are not very violent with the children. They may get friendly with the child. They may give gifts. They may pamper the child to some extent. The child starts feeling comfortable, and it is then they invariably introduce what can be even called as playing a secret game or keeping a secret strategy, that what we are doing should never be reported to parents. And meanwhile, they have won the confidence of the child so much that sometimes child succumbs to these kind of things told to them and may not even report to parents. By the time they realize or these things come out, a lot of damage has already happened. So these are the 5 points I feel has to be kept in mind when it comes to educating little children about protecting themselves from sexual abuse.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Rajan. Now, when we are addressing on sexual abuse, I would like Dr. Meenu to throw some light on how do you help, in case of child abuse or sexual abuse, victims to help to recover or to heal. What are the tools you use? Yeah.
Yeah. So we are talking of different types of sexual abuse. One would be early childhood sexual abuse, and that, of course, is a social time bomb because of the pornography and all kinds of pornography, even by pedophiles who are putting up certain kind of pornography, and it's easily available on online. So we are seeing this as a social time bomb. I'd like to say that. And also, what we are looking at in terms of sexual offenders, sexual abuse offenders, very often when we get into their history, they have themselves been abused in their childhood. So they have grown up to become offenders. This is a very dangerous trend based on some of the interviews I've done of those who are perpetrators of sexual crimes, that they have been recipients of this kind of sexual crimes as children. So we can see that a victim can create more victims and more victims, and there's a victim chain that continues. Therefore, it's very important to engage in the healing process of someone who is a victim of sexual abuse. Now, the earlier it is done, the better it is. First of all, beyond what Dr. Rajan has mentioned, we need to free the child of self blame, because more often than not, the child, especially if the perpetrator of the crime is someone who is known, someone who the child has otherwise been fond of. It could be an uncle, it also could be incest by a father, it could be by a brother. And remember, the sexual abuse is not only little girls, but it's little boys too, by young women. So we are dealing with both genders over here. So the first and most important thing is to remove the self-blame and the guilt. The questions that arise in their mind is, how did, what did I do? How did I invite it on myself? Could I have done something different? Could I have dressed differently? Was it because I went very close to that uncle? Was it because I was greedy for the lollipops that he gave me? Was it because I wanted to sit in his lap that he did it? So there are so many questions that result in a lot of self blame, especially if it has been made pleasurable. And as Dr. Rajan mentioned, more often than not, the offender does not make it painful and tries really hard to make it pleasurable, psychologically pleasurable, calling it a game, giving a lot of importance to the abuse victim. And so the child is confused. I'm enjoying several aspects of this. I'm also enjoying the touch in some way. I'm also enjoying the importance I'm getting, and I feel powerful with this this man who everyone thinks so highly of, but yet there's something that is discomforting about it. So it's very important to help erase and eliminate this particular sense of guilt and self blame. And the point to be noted is that even if the sexual offender is punished by law, or even if the parents are told and the parents kind of create a hue and cry about it and kind of, take this up with the family, if it's a family member or anyone, even if that happens, it does not remove the feelings of violation, the feelings of vulnerability that the abuse victim is feeling. It does not reduce the feelings of violation and vulnerability. And sexual abuse victims often suffer from very, very low self esteem or extreme feelings of inadequacy and low self worth, uh, an extreme trust deficit in the other gender. If the boy has been uh, abused, then he kind of has this overgeneralized view that all women are XYZ or all men are so and so. And that can play out in their adult man-woman relationships. Very often we find either the victim of sexual abuse may grow up to kind of protect oneself by binge eating and harboring obesity for fear, because one is feeling so vulnerable. And we find that obesity, when we kind of explore why is the person not sticking to any food plan, and you'd be surprised to know that often we find that while treating them for obesity, we realize that they are not letting go of the weight because they are afraid that if they lose the weight and are attractive to the other gender, then they may be victims of abuse again. So it can create many, many self defeatist trends. You can become frigid in your man woman relationship. You may also become a sexual offender, as I said, if you are not healed in that area. And you could also become a sexual addict and engage in promiscuity. So there's a ripple effect, and many families and many generations can get destroyed if you do not engage in the healing process very, very early on of the sexual abuse victim.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Meenu. Yes, for bringing light on all these points and aspects. I would like to move now from here to pleasure as the topic of the Sex Education Summit as well. So, Dr. Rajan and Dr. Meenu as well, what would you like to say from the medical perspective? How do you teach or educate couples to enhance pleasure in their sexual life or in their married life? Like in India, people just keep on living for years and years in the married life like brother and sisters or without having any sexual spark. So if such couples come to you, what is it that you tell them?
See, when it comes to enhancing pleasure in a sexual relationship, it is less about the techniques and the methods. It is more about how they relate with each other. If there is a lot of affection, they truly love each other, they respect each other, they are truly in love with each other, there is a romance between two of them, then for them to enjoy sex and even to experience orgasm and a very high quality orgasm is possible only when they are truly in love with each other. You may be best in your technique, but if you hate each other or if you have hurt each other in some manner or other, or you have unresolved issues between two of you, any of your techniques are not going to help. How you feel about each other is so important. So when you come close to each other, it should be two people who really in love with each other, who are in a romantical link with each other and want to be close to each other is so important. So that has to be given a lot of importance. Otherwise, there are a lot of people who talk about different techniques to different positions to have enjoy intercourse or to experience orgasms. It's less about the techniques, because when you actually love each other, you discover techniques, you discover ways, you care for each other's pleasure so much that you will try different things out, you will get the feedback from your partner. So first part is that you must really in love with each other. Secondly, even though you are in love with each other, there are moments when probably you are not into it, or there are moments when you are not feeling up to it because there is something else on your mind. So even though you are in a loving relationship, you have to respect the fact that whether the other wants to engage into the act or not. Of course, one should invariably, one should try to seduce the other, one should try suggest the other. And if you are in a loving relationship, the other would definitely respond. But unless the other is really ready, one should not force the other into any sexual intimacy. Number three is that, there are very often men tend to, be in a hurry and jump to having intercourse too early during the act. Foreplay is so important. Foreplay is utterly important. And unless you have engaged into mutually pleasurable foreplay, and it has really aroused both of us emotionally, sexually, physically, one need not be in a hurry to engage into a penetrative act. Penetrative act, there are men who have an apprehension, what if I lose my erection? What if I am unable to hold my erection? So as long as I have one, let me penetrate and be done with. Why the thought of being done with? It is a journey which is important and not just reaching your climax or ejaculating. So foreplay is very important, and for that, nature has given erogenous zones on our body, and they are not definite parts. Otherwise, the diagram can be shown to people. They have to be discovered, and they are different on each individual's body. Like, each tiger has stripes, but each tiger's stripes are different. Something similar, all of us have erogenous zones on our body, and we are ourselves not aware of it. So when a couple engages into a foreplay, they are in a relaxed atmosphere. They are attracted towards each other. They love each other. They are touching each other in a manner that is pleasurable to them as well as to their partner. They are seeing each other's responses. They are seeing each other's physical responses, verbal responses, and slowly there is a build up. And then at the end of it, it culminates in the form of an intercourse. Naturally, the arousal level is so high, and they are with each other completely, the pleasure is always heightened. But what happened? Oh, we have to finish it. We haven't done it for so long. Oh, what a long gap. We must do it now. So he feels, what if I can't hold my erection? Or when she demands, he says, oh, I had just masturbated in the morning in a bath. What if I don't get my erection today because I have ejaculated in the morning? So see, the kind of state of mind is so different. So it is to really enjoy the act and to really be completely into it and enjoy the whole process. The relationship between two of them and how they exactly go about it, how they build it on, is very important. And that's how it happens. When you are in a good mood, you enjoy your meal also better. But if you are in a bad mood, the same meal may not even taste good. If you got a bad news, even the favorite food may not taste that good. It's something very similar. If you are emotionally involved, you are relaxed, you are with your favorite person, and you engage into a very gentle, mutually pleasurable foreplay, and then you engage into the act, it's going to be more pleasurable, and there are higher possibilities of you even experiencing orgasm, and a very extremely pleasurable orgasm, because in orgasm also there are grades, you can say, medically speaking.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I would like to move to my last question before we take up the questions from the audience is, does the size matter? And in this case, I would like to highlight in both women and men case, women are very much concerned about their breast size. And in today's time, there are more and more women going for breast implants. So if you get such cases, for consultation, what do you advise them? And for men, many men feel little ashamed or doubtful about their penis size, because also when they don't see, other men genitals, they're also feeling like, oh, maybe it's small, or maybe it's not enough, or whatever. So what would you like to say, Dr. Meenu? Maybe we can start with you over here.
So basically, what you're referring to is, the women measuring themselves as sexually attractive or not to the other gender. So, through the generations, through the years, uh, the definition of what is sexually attractive has also changed. From the very voluptuous bodies to now the pursuit of size zero, things have changed across the years and generations. Even in different regions, you find whether it's in Japan, what is sexually attractive is very different. In China, it may be different. In Africa, in Germany, it may be different. Even what is viewed as sexually attractive in the North India, and if you look at the actresses, the Tollywood actresses in South India, what is viewed as attractive is very, very different. So this is going to keep on changing. But are you going to keep changing your body with the changing trends? And trends are trending, and what's trending changes every day. So basically, what makes you sexually attractive is not the measurements, it's not the topography of your body. What's really important is, are you comfortable with your sexuality? Are you comfortable with your body? Are you healthy and fit? And this comfort with your body makes you feel more sensual. So, to be sexually attractive, you have to be comfortable with your body, comfortable with your sexuality, and that makes you feel sensual. And the sensuality in bed makes you more sexually attractive. That's what I'd like to say.
Very beautifully you said and explained that. Thank you so much. Dr. Rajan, would you
Yeah,
like
yeah.
to say on the
As far
men?
as, yeah, men having complex about their organ being small is a very, very old issue. We have been dealing with it on a daily basis. If you ask me as a medical doctor, uh, as far as penis size is concerned, size doesn't matter. Why? There is a scientific reason. As far as female vagina is concerned, it's about 5 inches in its depth. But only the outer one third of female vagina, which is about, you can say about about 1.5 inches or 2 inches part, outer one third of vagina is only sensitive to sexual stimulation. And the clitoris, which gives the maximum pleasure, is actually outside the vagina, which is above in a vulvar part. So when a man is having an intercourse with a woman, it is only her outer one third, which is hardly about 1.5 inch or 2 inch size, is sensitive to sexual stimulus. So if the man penis on erection is even something as small as 2 inches, he can still pleasure the woman and even make her reach her orgasm with the intercourse. Now, this was even scientifically proven in an experiment where a group of doctors conducted this incident where they called one a very beautiful commercial sex worker, and they chose 3 men for this experiment. There was one man, his penis on erection was 2 inches in his length. The another man's penis was 4 inches in his length, and the third man, his penis 6 inches in length. This girl who was chosen for this experiment, her eyes were closed with a black cloth, and these 3 men in a random order engaged into sexual intercourse with this woman. And subsequently, a team of doctors asked a question. He tell us how was it and what was the size of the penis. And she could not even distinguish. She said the size of the penis was same in all 3 men because there are no sensations that she can feel beyond 2 inches. So that is why it doesn't matter. And invariably, women are, when they're intimate, very instinctively they close their eyes. They're not going to look at the size. Of course, there are women who could do that. But even when the two people are kissing, the woman has a tendency to close her eyes. So if she is involved and his organ is not that big and he penetrates, and as I said earlier, even the 2 inches is good enough, she can get a complete satisfaction. It is not how big you have, it is what you do with what you have. It is more important. It is the way man comes across while he's making love is more important than just merely the size of the penis. That's what we invariably tell people. It's like, whether I shoot you with a revolver or I shoot you with a rifle, the effect is going to be the same. So, and often, in a flaccid state, the male penis may appear small, but invariably when the penis is erect, the size more or less of all men becomes more or less similar, not exactly the same, and is always good enough. There is only one condition medically that we know of, which is called as micropenis, where the penis is truly undeveloped and so small, which could be even smaller than what I say, 1.5 inch in its size. Then, of course, but even in my entire career, I have not seen more than 5 or 6 cases of micropenis. Otherwise, all of the men who think that their organ is small, invariably, all that they really require is a reassurance, and they are convinced on explaining.
Thank you so much. I hope everybody is listening to this. And we'll just move now the last part, that is rapid fire round. With
Okay.
both of you, I would just like to take it up. So you can be just spontaneous and, yeah, without thinking too much, whatever comes the first answer, please just say it. Sexuality,
Love.
Divine,
sex education,
necessary,
Sorry.
HIV/AIDS,
to be careful about,
Epidemic.
COVID-19,
Pandemic.
pandemic, yeah.
Indian government,
Oh no.
Same here.
medical fraternity,
Hardworking,
Still learning.
currently.
Still learning.
uh-huh. Um, sex,
Love.
Love.
heart to heart center.
I love.
Our love.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Rajan and Dr. Meenu, for bringing such insightful wisdom and practice into this very sensitive and subject and topics. And we are ready to take the questions now from our audience. So whosoever would like to probably ask and go for it, please write any question you would like to know. I can also scroll up if somebody has already written any question. Thank you, beautifully taken, some very sensitive issues. I think everybody has understood everything. Nobody has any questions today. Thank you, thank you. So we have received one question. How can you help a teen who has been sexually assaulted?
Yeah. See, first of all, as briefly mentioned by Dr. Meenu earlier, that often those who are assaulted are feel that they have invited it on themselves, and there is a guilt associated. That is it that my behavior, maybe the way I was dressed, or the way I gave some wrong signals that has caused this to me. So rather than find, we always say that when you are assaulted sexually, you are never to be blamed. It is only the offender. It is one-sided act from him, and don't unnecessarily take a blame on yourself. So to work on people who are assaulted, to work on their guilt is very, very important. Moreover, the hurt that they have experienced for being offended is quite deep rooted. They can have suicidal ideation. It can affect their relationship even in future. Uh, they could get depressed, and this should very, very gently be handled by the counselor. And it should never sound something like you are interviewing or interrogating or investigating. It should always be very gently handled, because it's like how medical doctors handle a person who is wounded badly in an accident. We have to even handle the person very gently, like that one who is had sexually assaulted. uh, one has to be handled in a very, very gentle manner. He has to be helped get over the hurt and also help him to get guilt-free if he or she feels that he has invited in on.
Thank
Just
you. Yes.
to add to that, I'd like to say that it's important to ask the teen, uh, boy or girl, what would he or she like to see happen to the offender? So sometimes it could be a relative, it could be a neighbor. So, does the teenager want the parents to take some legal action? Does she want to see the person isolated in the family? Does she want to actually confront the offender? So it's important to dialogue with the teenager as to what is she, assuming it's a girl, what does she want to see happen by her caregivers in this area, and go by what she says.
Thank you, Dr. Meenu and Dr. Rajan. We have next question, which I would like to take it up with you, is full body orgasm from the scientific perspective. What can you say about it?
Yeah. See, of course, this definitely the full body orgasm or a profound orgasm, one when feels pleasurable all over the body, is an entity known. But the way the human beings are mammals, but they have lost their tail. We are also mammals. All mammals have tails, but we human beings at the time have lost their tails. Something similar, the somehow we have great extent human beings have lost the ability to experience the whole body orgasm. Our orgasm has remained limited to only our private parts or maybe one or two more erogenous zones here and there. And to be able to experience the orgasm, the whole body orgasm, as I said earlier, the two have to be deeply in love with each other. They need to be completely, very, very relaxed, consensually coming to each other. It is more of their expression of love for each other. They are not in a hurry, absolutely. They are pleasuring each other not for their own pleasure, but to pleasure the other also. And when they are involved in the act and when they reach to the orgasm, there is a higher probability of one reaching orgasm. Also, there is a myth that many people carry that man is supposed to be an active partner in a sex and woman is supposed to be a passive partner in the sex, which is a myth. Both need to be active, both need to be participating in the whole act and either turn by turn or together. And when they participate together in the act, the possibility of the whole body orgasm also increases. Not to be in a hurry to penetrate. Wait till both of you are truly feel ready. Both of you really are into it and completely into it, and then you engage into penetrative act. There is a higher probability of that you experience orgasm, not only at your private parts, but in your whole body. But if either of them are in a hurry, of your attitude while during the sexual act, I want my pleasure, I rather get it, then the possibility is less. When the relationship is truly heterosexual, where it is more of a sharing of an intimacy, where it is more of an expression of your love, the possibility of a whole body orgasm is more. It is not that how you thrust or what position can give you that, or whether you have a G spot or not, or how deep you thrust, and whether you have any cervical orgasm or not. These are very technical ways of going about it. You can do all that, but still you may not experience even the basic orgasm. So real orgasm comes between the two partners who are in love with each other and those who care for each other's pleasure. And it is their expression of love and is a sharing of intimacy for them. Then it is truly bliss, I guess.
Thank you. So you feel that the tantra can happen naturally, tantric energy, tantric sexual energy can move naturally if two
Absolutely.
people are in love and intimacy. All right, there is a very interesting question, and which is taken for the very first time in this summit. I would like to address. Being a virgin, a girl is apprehensive of how she would be in a situation when I actually do have sex, or how would I perform, so to say, whether she will be able to satisfy her man or not. What could you suggest to handle this anxiety? Dr. Meenu, would you like to address, or Dr. Rajan?
Well, actually, this is a lengthy answer. She really needs a consultation, a consultation to understand where the apprehensions originate from. Does she have a stigma related to sex? So we have to go into her psychosexual history. What has been her learning about sex? Does she have any sex education? And if so, from which source? Is it scientific? Does she have certain myths and misperceptions regarding the sexual act? Is there any fear that has been induced in her regarding sex? Does she see sex as a dirty, grimy secret, which is why she's not accessing the right kind of information? So I think taking a lot of sexual history of such a person will help the counselor, the sexual counselor, to help her more completely.
Thank you, Dr. Meenu. Shall we move to the next question? Dr. Rajan, would you like to
Yeah,
add something here?
that's I'm fine.
This is enough, no? Yeah. We have another question saying some fields of psychology have argued and conducted researches to try and understand if homosexuality is always like it is what it is, or can it also be due to environmental experiences like sexual trauma? I leave it to either Dr. Rajan or Dr. Meenu who would like to address on this.
I think
Yeah,
Dr. Rajan will address it, yeah.
yeah. See, as far as homosexuality is concerned, first of all, one must understand what homosexuality. When you are attracted to the same sex person exclusively, it is called as homosexuality. For example, a man is attracted towards man sexually, it is homosexual. Here, a woman is attracted towards woman, it is the same sex preference or lesbianism, we can call it. So first of all, it has to be first established because a lot of people are pretty confused. What they label as homosexuality may not be exactly what a classical homosexuality may be, and whether they are bisexual. Is there anything like is there anything like person is a transgender? One has to be first found out. So as far as pure homosexuality is concerned, no evidence is being found that person is born with it. That the person having same-sex preference, no, there is no evidence, there is no genetic evidence found, there is no reason found in the anatomy of the brain or the brain chemistry where one can say this person is born with homosexuality. It is invariably very unconsciously picked up, unconsciously learned, unknowingly learned by a person due to what he sees, what he is exposed to, what he experiences. And it is a sum total of his experience that he, at a particular age, unknowingly, unconscious, gets into a same-sex preference. And of course, on investigation, one can find out the source. If you go deeper into it, sometimes we can trace where it all began, but often there is no memory. Often it cannot be traced. That is why some people tend to think that people are born with it. No, no one is born with particular. We are born with the potential to get attracted to any gender. Not that heterosexual are born like that. No, we are born with the potential. Every person is born, not a fixed orientation when he's born. You are in a way possibility of being a multisex. Simply said, you are possibly a bisexual one because we are born with a union of a man and woman. So there is a half man and half woman in all of us. No one is born just with one part. So there is a feminine side to us and there is a masculine side to us. What exactly we train ourselves into, consciously or unconsciously, that's what our sexual orientation ultimately implies. Like an accent in a language. One is born with a certain accent. If a person who is born in an Indian family is made to grow in USA, the accent will be American accent. So we pick up there, no one consciously learns the accent. Like that, we don't consciously learn things with our observation, through our experiences, what we see, what we learn, what we read, invariably, slowly, unconsciously get migrated towards a particular preference. And that's how our preference becomes either a homosexual, heterosexual. Why by and large people are seeing heterosexual? That's what we'll end up seeing. Mummy, Papa, God, Goddess. hero, heroine, romance between man and woman, because you are exposed to more and more to that, naturally you tend to feel that, yeah, you are supposed to be attracted towards opposite sex. That's what you train yourself. But for some reason, it's the exposure or for some accident or with some kind of sexual assault or a child abuse or some exposure which has happened at the wrong time of your life, at the wrong place, one could very well, at a very innocent, pick up signals and can get unconsciously migrated. It is not a conscious choice ever. It is very unconscious, but unfortunately, I have to use the word choice because you are not born with it. It was you are not born with it. So in a way, you land up picking it up, not artfully. You land up picking it up. That is why it is no one is born with it, and invariably it is a sum total of what you have experienced during your growing years, particularly your pre-adolescent and adolescent years, which is very important because as a practitioner, I have gone into the depth of understanding where it all began in hundreds of cases, spending sometimes months and months working with them. And invariably, with a lot of efforts, almost 70-80% of the cases you can find where it all began. And not only is that me as a treating doctor who can trace it to that point, even people, patients, you can say, appreciate it at a particular stage of their therapy.
Thank you, thank you, Dr. Rajan. I really like how you put that we are not born either homosexual or either heterosexual. In fact,
Yes.
probably how we get influenced, because this is what we see, hero, heroine, and all what you said. So, and in fact, I would say from my own personal experience is if we stop putting our sexual discovery into any kind of cultural conditioning, any kind of ideas that allow our body expression, our natural expression to flow more freely, we may discover that, oh, we do have an attraction towards same sex or similar sex or opposite sex, but let it be your own natural discovery, either of having some idea bought from somewhere else. And that would really give you and make you discover your own true natural pleasure. Like for me, I can share my own personal experience. When I had a little encounter with the similar sex, I started to love my own body more. I was like, oh my God, now I see that why women body is so attractive. It's so curvaceous, it's so beautiful when I experience, because you love the same sex as you're loving and touching your own body. So it could be a very beautiful discovery if you allow without any preconceived ideas. So yes, thank you, doctor. And we have next question. Does fantasy spoil relationship? Well, it does not, but if you want to quickly answer something to this,
I think
Dr.
it
Meenu.
does. I
Yes.
think it does because relationships, I mean, a real relationship cannot match up to your fantasy. And today we see a lot of sexless marriages. In the last maybe 8 to 10 years, the trend is increasing of sexless marriages. And when we have gone into why that is a choice that they have taken, we see that they are so used to a masturbatory life based on their fantasy and addiction to porn that the real sweaty foreplay doesn't match up to the fantasy which is smelling of roses. So it has definitely contaminated partner sex when people have spent years and years uh, in a masturbatory life, uh, fantasizing based on what they've viewed in their pornographic fantasy or in the virtual sexuality.
Thank you, Dr. Meenu. But here I would really like to outline also maybe the definition of fantasy. Like it is very interesting how I view this word fantasy as how you viewed and explained it. For me, fantasy could also be some kind of visualization or some kind of exploration, even as a couple together or being in self pleasuring. So I feel that this word fantasy is also very wide, term. So yes, but thank you for bringing your own point of view to it. So the next question is, how come a person defines himself as a gay after 20, though he display normal symptoms till the age of 18? Is it imposed by others?
That's what I began saying. There is a lot of confusion, and often you yourself may not be able to know for yourself. That is why there is an expert required. That is why you need to go to a therapist who is trained in helping people with gender issues. Because I see more confused people who may come saying one thing and ultimately what we find out about them is something completely different. So if at all you are confused about your orientation or about an orientation of someone close to you, it is better to take a professional help rather than you trying to diagnose the issue.
Thank you. Thank you. Um, so the last question maybe we can take before Dr. Meenu has to leave, as she has to leave sharp at 3:30. She has the next meeting. We have, can we identify one's sexual orientation from early childhood and how to communicate them?
Just,
Same.
just, just,
Yeah.
just
Nasreen, I think already Dr. Rajan has addressed regarding sexual orientation from early childhood. But Dr. Rajan, if you still want to add anything, I can just read this question again. Can we identify one's sexual orientation from early childhood and how to communicate them same as part of education? We can't hear you. We can't hear you.
He's muted. I think he's muted.
Rohini, can you unmute? Rohini?
yeah. Am I audible now?
Yes, yes. Please.
Yeah. See, I can sense what whoever this question is questioning, because there needs to be, as I said, clarity between, as far as person is transgender or transsexual is concerned, it can be spotted at a very, very young age. But as far as homosexuality is concerned, often it takes time for a person to be at least adolescent age before you could investigate and assess whether the person has orientation issue. But very early childhood, no one can. Early childhood, as early as 3, 4, 5-year-old, one can definitely guess, or one can definitely suspect if it is a case of a transgender or transsexual, but not at all homosexual. Homosexuality, for it to be able to identify and diagnose it, would take the person to be at adolescent age.
Thanks. Dr. Meenu, would you have to leave, and should we say bye to you
Yes,
so that you can be
I
released?
will have to leave. Yes. So
Yes.
can I then?
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Meenu, for joining us. We'll just continue maybe for 5 more minutes with Dr. Rajan. Yeah, and
then. Thank you. It's a pleasure being here with all of you.
yes,
Bye.
pleasure to have you. Thanks for your time. Bye-bye. Yes, Dr. Rajan, maybe we will just take quickly couple of more questions which are more relevant. There is what and how to explain to a child about romantic scene or act they see on TV.
So it is as, see, the scene himself is self-explanatory. This man, this woman, they love each other, they like each other, they're very fond of each other. So they hold it the way I hold you. Don't you feel good when I hug you? So they want to touch each other, they want to hug each other. That's what's happening between these two people. What is so awkward about it? On the one, is a wonderful opportunity to teach about affection, to teach about love, to teach about romance. There's nothing to be awkward about it. On the one, flipping that channel and showing your awkwardness about it, you are giving the wrong signal that there was something wrong happening, and probably they have already seen it. To say, oh, doing that is something wrong, you are giving the wrong signal. Be very comfortable watching a romantic scene. What's the problem?
Exactly.
The problem, let them see how two people can really love each other. They're singing, I mean, typically in Bollywood scenes, they're singing song, wonderful expressions, and they're hugging each other, and they're slow motion running towards each other. It's a beautiful way of showing the romance. I love it myself. There's no harm in you seeing it and even allowing your children to see it and see along with them. What's wrong? It is not something, it is not some double X, triple X on that you are watching with the child.
Exactly. In fact, with this, I would like to also add that people don't ask this question, should I change the violent scene if somebody is punching somebody or abusing somebody? No, parents don't ask this. But
Yeah.
parents do ask, okay, if there is a romantic scene, should we change it or not? No. In fact, this is the loving expression or impression they can have and they can carry with themselves. Even your own self with your partner or spouse, you should be comfortable if you're holding hands, hugging, cuddling, even kissing, I would say, because children can feel the love through it. Children can receive the love through it. So thank you. um, there is a question which I would just address because we would be addressing it in our next summit, next session, which is, can a man have multiple orgasms? How can a man have orgasm without ejaculation? What are energy orgasms? Thank you for asking this. We have, in fact, today, which is a session on integrated sexuality for masculine. Please do watch it. It is at 7 p.m. today, and that can answer this question, wherein we are taking more aspect of energetic and tantric orgasm and how men can practice with the semen retention and without ejaculation. Thanks for asking. Should we move to the next question, Dr.
Yes.
Rajan? Is that okay? Yeah. Um, how can we handle a situation where one partner wants caress and small physical touch at regular basis, but the other feels only to touch, get physical only while intercourse?
See, everyone's sexual appetite is different. And as if you keep it only sexual in its nature, then disparity would always be there. A discrepant libidos we call. But when it is an expression of love, no one can say I'm sick of love. No one says I'm tired of love. Everyone loves to be loved. All of us want it, from a youngest child to an oldest person. If truly your physical intimacy, your touching each other is loving, I don't think it would be rejected. It may not always end into or result into some kind of high voltage drama and intercourse always. Who says it has to always end in that? Touching each other, holding each other, caressing each other, fondling each other, which may result into a say, penetrative act. It may not result into penetrative act. As I earlier said, it is not the destination. It is the journey which is important. And I don't think if you are touching your partner lovingly, it would be rejected. If a partner is very busy into some work, you should be sensitive enough to give that kind of a time. When you know that she is busy in something, and here you suddenly want to go and express your love, it may not be then love. It could be very well be your one-sided wanting to seduce her when she is not at all at that point of time possibly respond to you because of the circumstances and situation.
Thanks. There is a question which I would just like to address by myself also. How would you help the present generation teenagers resorting to misleading paths, pornography, and whatsoever regarding sexual education? We won't take this question in this particular session because we are addressing on different subjects. But for pornography, we have specifically 2 sessions. One was already held on day 1, which is specifically on pornography harms and solution for youth and kids, which was addressed by Dr. Gale. Also, tomorrow morning, we have specifically session for parents on how to talk about sexuality and sex to your children of different age categories. So please do have a look at those sessions. It would answer this question. Thank you for asking. And maybe just the last question we can take now. I'm just seeing which could be. How can a teen who was assaulted in childhood be talked by a parent?
See, a dialogue between a parent and the child should be an ongoing process. You need to have that closeness, that rapport with your child from day one. If you have not handled your parenting properly and the child has distance from yourself, he doesn't confide in you, he doesn't open up to you, or the way you have been treating him or the way you have conducting yourself, then suddenly one fine day, this dialogue cannot happen. So a dialogue between a parent and a child, whatever age the child may be, a teenager or otherwise, is a long process. One has to build that relationship between you and your child. And it's a responsibility. That is why I like the word, responsible parenthood. You have brought someone to this world, so you remain responsible for his well-being, remain available to him, communicate with him. Through your communication, the child is learning the art of communication. That is why we use the word mother tongue. No mother formally teaches mother tongue. We learn from our mother the way she speaks, what she speaks. Same way, parent and child dialogue is an ongoing process, and it has to be always ongoing, so that whenever crucial times come, whenever the child goes through a certain trauma, he shouldn't have to find the language and the words. He's already comfortable with talking to parents on all possible subjects. And then very comfortably, child can go and communicate to the parent, and parent will be able to address that. And if parents lack the expertise, parent can always take the child to an expert, to a therapist.
Yes, thank you for saying that it's an ongoing process to keep talking to your children about it. I'm planning to create a theater play for the children of primary level so as to impart the basic knowledge about sexual education, preferably about the appropriate and inappropriate gestures and touches. If someone shows to them or behave in such ways, and how would children know to inform their parents or concerned ones? That's a good initiative, Sharu, I would say. Please do organize it. It's important that each one of us do our bit to spread this message of sexual education and importance of it. Yeah. I see that we have taken up most of the question. It's also time. So thank you so much, Dr. Rajan, for joining us. And thank you everybody for joining us as well. And thank you from Goa and from Mohini Srishti. What you can do for us to support this work is please share with your social network. Please share it with your friends if you have enjoyed the session. It helps us to spread this message of sexual education wide and far. That's all I would ask, that if you can share, if you have enjoyed the session. And please do join us for the next 2 sessions today, which is on our sacred blood. Very important for men and women both to know about the menstruation cycle. It is not just what we think and we feel or we know. And the other one in the evening is on integrated masculine or integrated sexuality for masculine. So please do join us, and thank you, Dr. Rajan, for joining us. Thank you, everybody. Please do follow us and like us on Instagram and Facebook. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.